Coming up tonight on Game All Night, I'm joined by Tony Fryer. This Week and Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers, LLC. Upgrade your gaming experience.
Welcome to Game All Night.
Well, hello and welcome to another Game All Night. Tonight, I am joined by none other than Dan the bartender. How are we doing today, Mr. Dan?
Oh, doing so good. It's Friday here. I'm digging it.
I know, this is strange. Like, for those of you playing along at home, this is our second Friday night recording, so we can get drunk up in here. Yeah. That's also the reason why we don't do multiple recordings in a day anymore. It's because it adds up rather quickly.
Oh, that second one is so much fun.
You know, there's something to be said for that. Absolutely. So speaking of drinks, what do you have working over there?
Yeah, I'm doing a Trogs tonight, a little dry hopped pale ale from Trogs. And
Okay.
What about you?
I went the route of a nice Manhattan, and I made it with some Woodford Reserve tonight.
Oh,
So,
I can dig it.
I like a good
fine
Manhattan on the
cocktail.
rocks. So my guest tonight is Mr. Tony Fryer. And Mr. Tony, what are you drinking this evening? You must have a libation of some sort.
Well, the adult beverages will have to wait till I retire to the deck, but I'm currently sipping a coffee.
Okay, well, we'll try to make use of that caffeinated feeling for you. How's that?
That sounds terrific.
Excellent. So, if anybody knows Tony, they probably know you from two things, I would say right now. And that would, number one, be you were one of the founding members of Heavy Cardboard,
Yes, sir.
which is where I ran into you, well, in the literal auditory sense. And then also kind of started doing some game design and map design for Winsome style games on your own. Am I correct?
Yeah, just as a lark on that second thing.
Okay. So you started out, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the show is because, you know, in the early days of Heavy Cardboard, when you were on there, your voice was the one that really resonated. And I think it's hard to find, you know, because there's so many voices out there who's kind of speaks to you and your journey at that time. And your journey actually kind of paralleled mine when you kind of were starting out. Because, you know, you started out doing the reviews on the show, and then, you know, what happened that you decided that, you know what, no.
As to why I departed Heavy Cardboard?
Yeah, I mean, why, you know, because I have my own reasons why I would leave, and, you know, but
Sure.
I don't know what yours are specifically, so.
Well, there's two primary reasons. One is work perked up a lot, and that really kind of continues to this day.
When jobs get in the way of fun, it's just not right.
Yeah, and honestly, that was blocking my ability to play the games as much as I would like to play them in order to speak coherently about them.
Okay.
And that really wasn't fair to Edward or the listeners, and nor to me. And so I decided not to be a barrier to that going forward. And then additionally, I really got hooked on 18XX train games.
Right.
And I wanted to spend what limited game time I ended up having playing those games. So it was really kind of the double whammy. And I wrote Edward a resignation letter. You know, we're pals. So, but nevertheless, you know, we were quite serious about Heavy Cardboard. So I wanted to keep it all on the up and up and be formal about it. You know, and help him find a replacement, his Amanda, right? You know, so so for those two reasons, really, just work and 18XX games.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because it's funny. I'm about to record a roundtable discussion on reviewers, integrity, yada, yada. I just kind of fleshing all that out. And I think it's very interesting that, you know, one of the reasons I think in there is also when you said you can't play the games enough. I mean, when we're talking heavy games, we're talking games that are deep, complex, 2 to 3 hours, where the average gameplay times of the games that you played, and trying to get enough that you can form good, solid opinions, the player counts you need to form that at, and to explore strategy depth. Come on. I mean, that's why we play these games, right? So if you can't really speak to that, then you're not doing yourself a service, I think.
No, you're absolutely correct. Those games take a lot of plays, and that takes a lot of time.
Right. And I mean, God forbid you have to play one that you don't like or you're not in complete love with either, and you gotta trug through it. Like, that's just not fun.
No, but that is reality. If I like the game and Edward didn't, or vice versa, the other one of us would still have to suck it up.
Right. Now, is there a famous one that you guys disagreed on where you absolutely loved it and Edward didn't, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think the big one that comes out is La Granja,
Okay.
because I did not enjoy my plays of La Granja, but Edward did.
Well, I get the impression, just from reading some of your tweets and things like that, that random elements really just aren't. Yeah, exactly. They're not your bag, and it's funny because I just played Hotel Austria with my wife, and I'm like, I don't mind, what Jeff Engelstein calls it, randomness input, right? Like, everybody has to deal with the same mess,
Right.
but you know what? At the same time, that's still a mess that you have to deal with. Like, we were not rolling any resources. Like, how do you handle a game where, like, literally no one's rolling resources or no one's rolling rooms or whatever the flavor is? It's just like, so yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me that the amount of randomness and luck I'm willing to accept is has a direct correlation to the length of the game. So if I'm just playing a 45-minute, 1 hour game with people,
Right.
that's not necessarily a heavy game or whatever, then that's perfectly fine, right? But where I draw the line in my mind is if I'm playing a 4 hour, 6 hour, 8 hour game, I don't want your victory or my victory, even though I don't care who wins, to be the result of a lucky card draw or a die roll. I want it to be because we both had an effect on the game, and that was determining the outcome.
Right. I mean, it makes total sense because, you want that long-term planning to pay off. You don't want somebody to just kind of luck into it, or you don't want to do the same because then you feel like you cheated and you're like, how did I win? I didn't really do anything. It just kind of happened. I felt that way with Terraforming Mars, honestly. I seem to win a lot when I play, but I can't really say like, oh, I have a winning strategy for it. I'm like, no, I just make best use of what I get, right?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I absolutely enjoy Terraforming Mars.
I don't hate it, but it's just like it doesn't hit that same button for me that it seems to hit with a lot of people, right? Like, there's a lot of people who love it, and it's enjoyable and it's fun if somebody puts it on the table. I'm not going to say no, but at the same time, I'm like, it's not in my collection, and that's fine.
Absolutely, it's fine.
So you definitely have, you're sitting in front of some games today. And if anybody at home has watched any length of my show at all or paid any attention, 18XX, I wouldn't say it's a passion, but it's definitely something I love. And I don't feel a lot of people talk about. So I have no problems bringing it up and talking about my deep, dark past with the old 422s, as it were. But that's a pretty impressive stack of games you have there. And, boys and girls at home, go look up how much these things cost and you'll see what I mean. But that's kind of healthy. And I'm guessing these have to be your favorites.
Yes, sir. I figured that rather than look at my empty table back there, this is my office, I work from home, I would put out what I think. So those are, even though there's more than 5, those are my top 5 18XX games.
Okay.
Even though there's more than 5.
So you just, maybe I should have called you on the to kind of team up with Ambi and I on my top 5 list.
Oh no, she was fabulous, man.
So
And she's really super cool.
oh yeah, it was amazing. I'm like, she got me into trying Cleveland, which I absolutely love, and picked up Czechoslovakia, which that's been very interesting. It's definitely a different approach.
The 2-player game is really good.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try that Monday. I have a friend coming over. So I also see on there you have probably one of the very first copies of 18 USA, I would guess, sitting down there next to its cousin 17.
Yeah, so like those are kind of the same game in the top 5, right? It's the 1817 system is what I'm calling it.
Okay. Yeah, the jerk, short your friends, kind of ruin their stock price. Yeah.
You bet. Lots of
don't
fun.
play that. Yeah, don't play that if you don't want player interaction, right?
Yeah, for sure. Somebody's going to get upset, all right?
So you saw my list, and you saw Ambi's as well. What do you think? Which ones were missing? Which ones would you have put on there that we didn't discuss? Because obviously we both gush over 1880, like that. They're personal favorites.
Yeah. Well, so here I made my little list here. Why don't I just I'll share that.
Please.
So like in my heavy cardboard days, Edward, and he still is, but and I was a big time preparer.
Okay.
So yeah, and these are in chronological order because I'm not a fan of ranking things.
Okay.
So, but 1817/18 USA,
Cool.
just because of all the shenanigans in that 1817 system.
And believe me, there are shenanigans to be had.
Absolutely. Mergers, liquidation, hostile takeover. I mean, just
Oh yeah.
loans, lots of great stuff. 1822 is on that list as well. You can see it back there, just because the auction mechanic in the game is something that tries to often break an 18xx truism, and that truism is it's often best to invest your money in the stock round and leave the stock round holding as little money as you can, provided you can invest wisely, and you have things to invest in, because that money would potentially earn you dividends and capital gains, right? But in 1822, it's like, well, I need to sit on some money so that I can bid on what's coming up in the next auction, because there's auctions in every stock round for like the first half of the game, So I think that's really unique. Plus the game's got mergers, which is my absolute favorite mechanic. So
it's wonderful. Absolutely.
Yeah. 1830/18 Chesapeake is what's next, because 1830 is just an all-time classic game that is just phenomenal with different player counts, and there's so much you can do in that game. And 18 Chesapeake is soon to be published, but it's become my go-to teaching game. So it's an 1830 clone. It's got a little more money in it, and so I've played it 6 or 7 times now.
Okay.
In almost all of those cases, teaching new players, which is something I love to do. And there's a lot of trains getting purchased out of hand, but no one's going bankrupt. So that extra money just kind of protects the players from that bankruptcy, but still is teaching you all of the 1830 concepts.
Interesting.
So it's quite cool. And then the next two, I think so. So that's an All Aboard Games production. And he made a few copies and sent them out to people that would basically do play testing.
Okay.
And teach other players and give them feedback and stuff. And his goal, he stated this publicly, is to actually make an official print run with a game producer.
Oh, to go the publishing route versus the normal self-publishing that they've been doing.
Yeah. He's got some ideas to get it out there and get it out there at a reasonable price. You mentioned, these XX games are a little bit pricey. A lot of that's because they're hand produced.
Yeah. And they're still pricey even when you have to cut the tiles yourself sometimes.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, they are indeed labors of love, and usually small production runs, months of waiting list. Even if you order an all aboard game now, you're probably going to be waiting at least 30, 60 days for a build sometimes.
Maybe, but Scott does a really good job. I think he keeps a few games on hand. He gets ahead of things.
Okay.
Like just a couple of weeks ago, I ordered 18 Scandinavia, and he invoiced me the next day and shipped it that same day.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess
so
when you make a couple, it's easier to just do a bunch and then stock them up. Or
exactly, economies of scale. Let me make 5 at a time, even if I'm only going to sell 1 or 2 right now. Perhaps that's what he does. I really don't know.
Interesting.
But it must do something like that to ship them out pretty quick.
All right, so moving up.
1837/1824.
Okay.
Those are kind of a small and large version of the same game. So 1837 is kind of the big, sprawling, multiple hours, leisurely train. I can't even call it a train rush, because it's not
More
a
of
rush.
a train jog.
More of a train jog, stroll, yeah. Set in Austria. And 1824 is kind of the shorter version of it, where there's fewer companies, and there actually is a train rush because a train gets exported at the end of the operating rounds. But they're kind of just two very similar but distinct takes on the exact same game. And they're both phenomenal. So if you want a 4-hour experience or an 8-hour experience,
right,
dig it.
Awesome. And is there anything special, or none of the ones you mentioned do any like multiple gauges or anything like that? These are all pretty straightforward system games. Maybe multiple layers of companies and things, but nothing too crazy.
Nothing too crazy, yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Now,
And then the last two are 61 and 67, which are also kind of the same game system, right? Like 61 is in Russia, 67 is in Canada, but it's essentially all the same rules.
Right.
And there's a slight difference. Like in 1861, the minor companies start in specific locations, but in 1867, you can start one wherever you would like. So it's a slight
There's
difference.
no communism in Canada that we know of. Just good health insurance.
It's socialism, right? But
so I'm actually, just to reel it back just one second, because you guys are all deep in already on favorites and
Dan has to keep me
variations of the
grounded.
system. No, but because I've only played 1830, and it makes me curious for you, Tony, and actually for you too, Chris. Like, what was your entree into the series? Like, what led you to play for the first time? Did someone else, was someone else like pushing for it, an advocate to draw you in, or was it something that you had an interest in from other exposure? Like where did it begin? Because you guys both caught the fever pretty bad, and in the last few years.
Yeah, it's funny because when I said our experience mirrored each other, I started to hang around with a group that was regularly doing 18XX right about the same time that you left Heavy Cardboard. So it was around the same time that you were getting it to the point where I'm not getting enough time to play the things I want to play. I'm playing the things I have to play that we talked about earlier. So what was the on-ramp for that then?
Well, long story short, I used to be a miniature wargamer, painting and collecting miniature historical figures, like American Civil War and Napoleonics, stuff like that. And occasionally at our club gathering, people would be playing 18XX. I was like, what is that horrible, ugly looking game they're playing? So I've seen it. And then when I kind of got into board games, I was asked if I wanted to play, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And I was kind of just tossed out there, and it was just a horrendous 8-hour experience, and just hated it. And then a good friend, Chad Cook, said, Tony, look, you're into all these heavy games and stuff. You've got to give 18XX another try. Let me introduce you to it correctly. And so he proceeded to do that. And I just like, here it is, hook in the knife.
Yeah, it's it is like that, Dan, and you will not. You'll find this story is the common one where the first game I ever played was 30, and I was the one who went bankrupt and ended it. I really did not have a lot of fun playing it because all of a sudden these guys are putting together runs that are going for ridiculous amounts of money with diesels, and I'm like, what? I can barely figure out the 2+2, and now you're doing this diesel thing, all this nuance that goes on, and really there's like 3 parts to the game, and I think it's it's the stock and being able to understand and manipulate and handle that. I think it's the track laying is another part. And the board gamers get hung up on track laying because we're like, oh, this is like Railways of the World, but it's not, because you share it all. And then, I think the other part is really just knowing what to do with your company and when. Like, when do you acquire your miners? When do you buy in your privates? When do you do that stuff? So that's a lot to get right in the first few games. I mean, I wasn't even competitive probably until I was at least a dozen games in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and even then, it's just like I can literally count on one hand how many times I've won. It's been 3. Like, legit, I am not exaggerating. I have won 3 times, and I can tell you one was 1880, one was 46, one was 22, because it really, when you win that against somebody who's really good, it sticks. It's like, yes, I finally climbed that hill or conquered that slope, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. I generally, just as a rule, don't really care who wins as long as we're all playing as well as we can.
Right.
But the first time I won was against Edward and Chad in 1846, and I'll never forget that day. As geeky and stupid as that sounds.
Yeah, and I can tell you exactly, that was the first game I ever won, was 46 when it just came out, and it's this gorgeous production. And it was getting towards the end of the game, and somebody was going crazy on Train Rush, and I was doing half holds, and I'm totally losing everybody. But it was enough that I did not have to buy trains out of pocket, and I was able to buy the bigger, better, and get some much better runs at the end, which made it all worth it. But it's just like, it's amazing. And I can't really equate it to anything else, because yes, it absolutely is Spreadsheet the game. It really is. When you start getting into stock price and manipulation, and if that's the game you're playing, it can be very much about the numbers.
Well, I do think that it is the best spreadsheet I've ever played, though. And like, the reason that hook gets so deep, or got so deep in me, is because I really enjoy the track laying, right? That route building mechanic. I mean, I love the game Karuba because I'm building tracks, I'm building routes,
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I love the shareholding because, in effect, that is letting me kind of invest in a share of your victory points, right?
Yeah.
Because, I'm investing my victory points in to get a share of your victory points. So, the diversity in that, it's really the same core rules through most of these games, just different chrome. So, you've got this wide universe of stories that you can play because the games are long enough for those stories, right? But these games have depth. Those simple rules really give you a lot of options. Those things that you're saying about what to do with your trains and the best things to do with your companies at different times. But
right.
These games also have, and because people love to talk about depth in games, right? But these games also have current to go at that depth, right? Where the players are pushing things.
I like that. Yeah.
Specifically, like with the technology, i.e., buying trains and rusting older trains, right? So there's a current involved in these games to go at that depth, and that just makes it some really dangerous water, and I love it.
Yeah, because you get one guy at the table who's buying all the trains and can afford it, and is just rushing all the trains, and then next thing you know, you're sitting on a pile of rust because you can't run anything. There's so many avenues, and I would even argue that there is a surprising amount of theme for construction paper and cardboard. The best example I have currently is Cleveland. So Cleveland, actually, you're kind of talking more about the public railway system in and around the area. But what they do is the game usually just has this ramp, and as the golden age of trains goes on through the 1800s, and it peaks usually around 1900. Well, Cleveland actually represents the Depression, And like all of a sudden, everything that was like rich and valuable all of a sudden dips and dips hard. But then you try to get through that as fast as possible because it comes back up again as it represents like the 1930s and things. And I love that. And I love the, the RTA and the big kind of, the Amtrak companies in coast to coast that kind of come in and just kind of, nope, we're just going to start gobbling things up because you can't run your business now.
Yeah, that depression mechanic in Cleveland's really clever, man. That's pretty terrific.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love games with mergers, whether they're the kind that you just talked about, where an Amtrak or the Russian is going to come in and take from you the things that you're mismanaging.
Yep. And then sometimes it never happens. Like we played Mexico and it never even formed because, the criteria wasn't there. So it's just
Sure.
like sometimes it's a big scary monster that never gets out from under the bed. Well, I think this is a great place to take a quick break. And we can get back because I can sit here and talk about all these all day long because I find them fascinating. And I just see that stack and I'm like, I already want to play 5 of those like right now because...
Me too.
Yeah, right? I need to move to Colorado for multiple reasons. That is probably one of them. So we'll be back with Tony Fryer right after this word from somebody. Have you or a loved one been hurt in a board game accident, by a table, cut by a card, or worse? Have you suffered a DVT from sitting at a board game too long? Have you or someone you love lost fingers, appendages, or even life due to these games? Well, here at Meeple and Bits, we are the board game lawyers. No one understands board game law like we do. We will fight hard for your right. So be sure to contact us before you make any decision. You can reach us at 1-800-555-BITS. That's 1-800-555-BITZ. And remember to call us because we don't get paid unless you do. And welcome back. I am here with Mr. Tony Fryer, who is a layman's game designer. So you do some rudimentary game designing in your side, right?
Yeah, I guess it kind of started when I wanted to do an SNCF map. I love the SNCF Winsome game. And this was in our first year of heavy cardboard. And so I reached out to John Borer and said, hey, John, you don't know me. I'm just some random nerd out here, but I'd love to make an SNCF map and distribute it for free to the attendees of the very first HeavyCon.
Oh.
And he said, absolutely.
Wow.
Go right ahead. Because I guess he's that kind of a guy. But he did say, send me one too. So that was cool.
Fair enough.
So we did that. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy the map. I get several emails or geek mails or whatever per year asking me for more. But the point of it was just really kind of an exclusive for those first 16 people to ever come to HeavyCon.
Right.
And so we did print up extras, and Edward probably still has 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those. But that's how you get it if you want to get it.
Go hound him. Is that what I'm hearing?
Hound him. But I love it. I've made another one that me and my son have worked on together. It's a tribute to 1830 because it has a 2D stock market and there's some mechanics to trash the stock, which is not something that well, that's not true. Stock can go down in SNCF in some of the different maps, but generally not through a trashing mechanic. So I like that, and we've been tinkering with doing one set in England using a concession mechanic.
Okay.
So yeah, so I like to do that. I'm also been tinkering with an 18XX game. But here's my take on it: it's a Winsome-esque is the word I use.
Okay.
Design, and because the Winsome games are all kind of smallish, shortish, and meanish.
Okay.
And they're all based on 1830. And in fact, they even utilize components of 1830. And they can do that because 1830 is ubiquitous. And my thought is, well, now with GMT's success with 1846,
Right.
that seems to be pretty ubiquitous too. Could we do a Winsome-esque game
Based
that
on
uses a
46.
lot of 1846 systems and components? And so I'm working on one where it's based around a hypothetical situation where the tracks did go through Denver rather than through Wyoming for the Transcontinental Railroad. So basically, that Chicago tile would be the Denver tile.
Okay. Makes sense.
And my
Interesting.
main mechanic is hostile takeover. So
So what do you think really separates? Because I'll be honest, I do not really understand the difference between a Winsome and an 18XX. I don't know what separates. I mean, other than the brand, I guess, but what really differentiates the two?
well, most Winsome games are not 18XX games.
Okay.
They're a lot of them are what people call cube rail games because you're laying cubes on a map of
Like
hexagons.
Age of Steam or
Well, like SNCF, right?
okay.
Where instead of laying a track in a hexagon, I'm going to put a cube there. That means my railroad has track through that hex.
Okay.
So it's a little more abstracted. You're not worried about if the track goes straight or turns left or turns right or anything like that. It's just a cube in a hex.
You don't have to know how many Ys or X's or rocking chairs are in that particular tile set you're using. Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly. In a lot of the games, there's only a limited number of cubes that can go in certain hexes, so it promotes some competition for routes and stuff like that.
Okay.
But Winsome has produced several 18XX games that are those ones that utilize 1830 rules and components with a little bit of extra spice and mechanics to make the game a unique experience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're a little different, but still kind of the same, all at the same time. So now would you tell somebody to maybe do a Winsome game before an 18XX to kind of get a feel for things, or would you maybe say no, go straight in?
Yeah. Do what you think you're gonna like.
I like that.
Dive in.
So then we have like the whole Age of Steam family, because we'll lump in all the Age of Steam, and even Railways of the World if we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And how do you feel about those guys? Because I don't know, man. There's just something about breaking out Railways with 6 people and just going for broke sometimes. That's just a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Age of Steam is one of my favorite, I guess, systems since there's so many maps and different rules.
Sure.
Of all time. It's just a phenomenal game, and there's such a wide landscape, diversity of experiences that you can have with Age of Steam. And I think that translates a bit down into Steam. I actually started playing Steam before I played Age of Steam.
Right.
And but I haven't really kept up with Steam just because Age of Steam just scratches my itch definitely more solidly than the Steam does.
Yeah,
I've never played Railways of the World, but I want to. It looks gorgeous with some of those components.
Yeah, Age of Steam can be a little rough. I mean, that can be, if you don't bid right, or, you still lose your bid, even though you don't win the bid. You still have to pay. And it's like, it's one of those systems where it can be a little brutal. But Railways kind of takes Steam, and I don't know, I kind of hover. Like when I want a light version, I tend to go more towards Steam proper, just because I think like moving through the engines is a little simpler and the actions you take. But Railways, you're right, the map is huge, you can play a lot of players, and it's you have all the little choo-choos, which you can get in regular Steam now too. But it looks great when it's filled up on the table, and you can see when somebody cuts you off. It's great. It's all those same feels you get.
Nice.
So when you're not actually, I do have one question. So
Yes, sir.
Ambi reached out, and we had a discussion with a guest that was on not too long ago about elephants in games. And considering that the mascot for Heavy Cardboard is indeed an elephant, and right before you left, I believe you awarded Arkwright the Golden Elephant that year, as I recall. So she seems to, and it was Ambi, and she wonders if the elephant for the logo was inspired by 1853 at all, which would be India, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was not. So if you think about me at that time, I was not an XX player
Oh, that's fair.
when Heavy Cardboard was forming, and my thought there was heavy elephants are heavy. Cool.
There you go. Squashing
No.
boxes. All right, fair enough. I told her I'd
So
ask.
now it's a happy accident.
Well, right? But it's just like, we're wondering the pachyderm is grossly underserved in modern board game.
We believe that the age of the elephant is coming. We believe that, like, 2019, I think, year of the elephant.
It's the year of the
in board
elephant.
games.
Zombies are gone.
Oh, yeah.
Elephants are here.
Well, okay, all right. Let us set our sight a little lower. I think we first overtake sheep before we
Whoa,
set our
sheep?
sights on zombies. Okay.
Wow, that's like upsetting. Wow, we maybe in the U.S. I don't know if we could upset sheep out in Europe though. That's a tough sell. But all right, so if you're not playing 18xx because you don't have now, granted, with all honesty here, we can find 18xx games that we can play in 2 hours. We're adults. You're playing with a group of people who knows the system and knows the game. There are several out there that we could probably knock out, right? That's fair. But
Yeah,
let's say,
often we'll just play till someone is clearly the winner.
yeah, I've played that game a lot where I'm like, well, you're obviously got much better share price and a much bigger stack, and you're probably going to max that out. So let's start the next game. Exactly. And that's fine. If you guys end your 18xx games, I give you permission, and hopefully you do, just call it. Like, why? Sometimes you want to run it out because you want to see what happens. But ultimately, we're in this for fun, people. So what do you do when you're not playing a train game? Because that's pretty much all we've talked about right now.
Yeah, well, I play all kinds of Euro games as well. So I like war games. I like Euro games of all weights, in spite of my heavy cardboard background.
Fair
And
enough.
let's see, every Thursday night that I possibly can, we have a local game group that I attend, and we'll just play practically anything with the group. There was 11 of us there last night, and so there were a lot of different games getting played. I actually played Carthago twice, and I played For Sale once. So that's a fairly light evening.
Yeah.
Even with a fair bit of randomness, mind you.
A lot, actually, I would argue. Yeah, I wouldn't have put that. So what is your take? Now, I had to demo Carthago at Origin, so I got a lot of plays in. So I'm kind of anxious to see what the expansion's going to do. What do you like about it? That obviously you like it. You played it twice, right?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It is pretty short, pretty quick playing game. And I guess I like the fact that I have to make tough decisions with my cards,
Okay.
especially when I'm taking an action that already has a couple of a worker or two on it, because I've kind of got to, temporarily sacrifice a card that, then it makes me go, I can't spend this one because I want to do that. I like that kind of internal struggle in my mind.
Right.
That's a lot of fun,
Yeah, and I think that's one of those feels that we get from multi-use cards is that you're giving up something good to hopefully do something better.
Right.
You kind of hope it works out. I think that's kind of the dilemma. So the more options you put on a card, the more I think you can kind of sway that decision too.
You bet.
It can be a lot of fun. So has anything else kind of caught your eye recently? I kind of see you have Bali and Santa Maria behind you at the moment.
Yeah, those are going to be on my next auction, actually. That's why they're up here. Because, my game shelf, I have acquired a bit of a reputation for being notorious as a game renter.
Okay.
And so, like, my game shelves are a certain size. I have 4 of those Calyx shelves down there for Euro games, 2 for XX games. And I've said that's the limit of my collection, right? Because there's so many games, and there's just not enough time to play them all. And so I'm only going to hang on to the games that I feel are going to get played or that I truly just adore. And even 4 shelves is probably too much. But so my rule is kind of when a new one goes on the shelf, something else has to come off the shelf.
Now, So I think you've been gaming about as long as me. I think you started out around what, 2011, 2012 in that ballpark with
Yeah, somewhere in there when I
Puerto Rico and
right
okay.
Puerto
So
Rico.
so it's like, when did you reach the point where it's very easy to just keep buying and going because, learning something fresh and playing something new, it's a huge part of this hobby. And I think it's the cow catcher on the front of the train, if I can use one of our euphemisms, right? It's the breaking edge that's just kind of making all the games that we want to play possible behind it at the same time, right? Because there's a reason we want those sales. So it helps move all the other things as well behind it. So when did you kind of reach the point where you kind of go, okay, and what was the key factor in saying it's time to start shedding? Because when I talk to gamers who are about at this age of gaming, there is a tipping point, and I'm curious where yours was.
Well, just physically seeing large collections.
Right.
Several of my friends around town have quite large game collections, and when I was just like, okay, I'm out of room on my shelves, and I started stacking up games like this. Oh wow! So I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I don't know what really snapped, other than just seeing other large collections and knowing that those people are not really playing all of those games. They're just, they're in love with the idea of those games, and that's perfectly fine, because I'm in love with those games too, and the idea of having those games. But for me, it's just a space issue. I just, I want to keep it trim, my collection.
And that's fair. And I think that, the sooner you can kind of come to grips, because I'm right at the point now where things are starting to, I have the receiving table in the game room, and it's just starting to get a few little piles on it. And I'm like, well, now it's time to decide what's going on the shelf, what's coming off, and what's going out. So what kind of criteria do you use? Because everybody's different. And I always love to ask when I have the opportunity, because I think everybody's path into the hobby is unique. And I also think people's way to kind of cull is unique as well.
Yeah, at first it was pretty easy, because there were games that,
right,
I just don't enjoy, or stopped enjoying, or whatever, because I rent games. I want to try that game.
Sure.
That does not mean I'm going to fall in love with that game or even keep that game.
Okay.
So at first it was easy, but then, right, you can see by this stack here, Santa Maria is a terrific little game. So now we're at that point where it's like, oh, these are in themselves heavy games in making the decisions of which games need to depart the premises. So basically right now, it's in my head, it's how much am I in love with the game, and when was the last time I played it? What's the odds of me, playing it in the very, very near future? And then what I try to do is just get them up on BGG at a good price.
Right.
I'm not trying to make my money back or anything like that. It's just because I've had my money's worth of fun from the game, most likely. And I would like the games to go to a good home. So, $20 for this, $10 for that, whatever it might be.
Right.
I just want to, I guess, pass it along to somebody else at a reasonable price, and not keep the clutter here.
I've kind of reached that point where you actually have to, I almost check the garage to see if I have enough Amazon boxes outside that I can reship what I have in the game room that needs to go out. And I'm like, if I have enough to ship, I'll do it. If I don't, it's tough. But, it's true though, right? You don't like a game, it's easy to get rid of it,
Yes.
but also when you're kind of the person who buys the bleeding edge stuff, it's difficult, because you're like, I really want to try Newton, and my other friends aren't going to buy it. So it's on me. If I want to try it, I need to buy it. Mm-hmm. So I think the trick, if you want to keep your collection trim, is to have a friend who's just as crazy about buying games as you are. I think that's the key, because then they'll help share that load. But otherwise, if you don't have that friend, you are that friend.
You are so correct, Chris.
And then they're not even renting. You have now become the free library of Denver, Colorado, or wherever you are.
Yeah, it's real easy, Chris, for some of the rest of us around you to keep our collections trim. It's like, oh, I want to try. Oh, look at that. Who's Chris is bringing that?
It is so true. And then you add in, you start to add in the other difficulties of being like the game concierge or the omni gamer, where, well, I need 2-player stuff to play with my wife. I need party games to play with my friends, because it's expected when Chris shows up at a party, he brings games. So, I literally have a section of those. My 18XX live down here next to the studio because no one will choose them out of the game room to play. They're going to come down to the dungeon and sit at the table, and we're going to play it there. It's crazy, but you need to keep a collection, and I think you hit on it, is you need to find out what is kind of the point where you need to stop, or you need to say, this is enough. I need to start either, adding more real estate and shelves, or that's it. Like, stacks are not good.
Just earlier this week, I did something that would have been unfathomable even a month or two ago, and that is I divested myself of 5 18XX titles.
Whoa. So, I'm almost afraid to ask which ones. But here's the other thing. I always find this funny when you call. It's like, well, if that person has it, I don't have to store it, and then I can still play it anytime I want.
This is correct.
They might love it a little bit more, and I might get to play it a little bit less, but it's still available.
Absolutely.
So which ones, I have to ask now, you kind of put it out there. So,
all right.
So what ones made the cut or did not, as the case?
Sure. 4 of them were some Japanese productions, 18NK, SS, SY, and 1891, which came as kits. So I got them from Japan as paper kits, and 3 of them, I built 3 of them, and worked hard with other friends around the world, as well as using Google Translate to make English rules for them, and then realized that we're just not going to play them because there are so many fantastic ones. Not that those are not fantastic,
right?
Because one's based on 30, a couple are based on 56. I'm sure they're terrific games, but Chad and I recently had that conversation of like, man, there's so many good games, and these are games that you want to play 7, 17, 37 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those kind of numbers that, we're getting old. Life is short. There's no reason for me to collect these. Let me get these to somebody that might want to actually put them on the table. So those 4 things. And then the 5th one was 18NW, which really kind of makes me sad. It's actually got some really good ideas in there, but it's the rule book was a disaster, I guess. It wasn't. It wasn't quite where it should have been.
Yeah, you had me scared. I thought you were about to say 18NY, and I'm like,
no.
Pierre's actually a friend, and I'm like, ooh, don't say that one.
No. That's a cool game. That's a cool game.
I like it when you get another element like the coal and the things that one brings in. I like something different in there.
Every game has its own flavor.
So true. So I guess kind of the last thing I want to touch on is, and it's funny that you kind of said you came from a modeling background, so you're kind of used to building games from scratch and from hand and doing that stuff. Now, do you enjoy kind of crafting some of the 18XX game kits? Do you have fun kind of going through? Because let's be honest, it's not easy to get perfect hexes every time. It's sometimes rough, right?
Well, I've always been somewhat of a crafter, even as a little munchkin, and that was a good thing to have, a skill to have when I was a miniature war gamer, because I'd often make my own terrain features and things like that, right?
Sure.
And that's definitely carried through into specifically, I guess, the 18xx realm of things, because there are several games that are available as print and play. And I do enjoy very much printing out stuff and laminating it and cutting it. I know that sounds deadly boring to most people. But
sometimes it's fun to turn on the TV and just kind of veg out. And
absolutely, man, some background noise, and you're vegging out and you're cutting stuff. But I also love to do some of the graphical work too. And so, earlier in our conversation, we talked about the Winsome XX games.
Right.
Winsome games are notoriously known for their lower grade of materials, right? They are construction paper for certificates and things like that, right? Which that's perfectly fine, because I'm definitely in the camp of I want the game to function more than I care about its artwork.
Fair.
So, but what I do is when I buy a Winsome 18xx game, I always make my own shares and charters and things like that, using the style of the Deep Thought games, the Olive Board games. That what I think of that classic art style.
Right.
I always
the color bar on the left. Because when we lay out shares, we want things to be consistent, I guess is a good way to put it.
Make my tokens, so I enjoy that, so I have the best looking Winsome games in town.
It's funny. We always decorate what we love, I think, when it comes to board games. I love pimping things out. I went as far as I made playmats for Cleveland, and I made a playmat for 1880 that is like literally like a neoprene mat that I went and did all the artwork behind it, scanned it in. Yeah, I'll have to grab that. I'll grab that at the break and show you. It's
all right. Yeah, I would love to see that. That sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, it's funny. We don't play these games because they look good, but there's something about playing them when they look good.
I agree. While I am form over artwork or whatever, artwork can definitely lend good stuff to a game.
Absolutely. So I think this is a great place to stop. I've loved this. This has been a lot of fun. But I think Dan wants to play a game, and I think we should do that. But I'm going to grab my 1880 because I kind of need to show it off now. But so we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll start up the game right after this.
Introducing the all-new convenient travel edition of Game All Night. Perfectly sized to fit in your phone or audio device, the Game All Night audio show is now a podcast you can take with you on the go. Featuring the witty repartee you have come to know and love from the video show, but with no distracting pretty sets or guests to get in the way of your listening enjoyment. Now you can play along in the comfort of your car, filling your ear holes with soon-to-be classic episodes and games galore. Find links, news, and episode guides at GameAllNightShow.com. Download yours today.
It's game time!
All right, so that was an extended break for us because we were all gawking over each other's 18xx stuff, and maybe I'll throw that at the end of the episode if we recorded any of that. We'll see. But that's pretty cool things. But Dan has come up with an interesting game for us this evening. So, Mr. Dan, what are we playing, sir?
So today we're going to play Zendo. If you're not familiar, Zendo is a game normally played, it's a Looney Labs game normally played with their pyramid pieces, but it's actually Looney Pyramids, but it's actually possible to play Zendo with virtually anything. Tonight we'll be playing with board games. I'll explain how this works. So Zendo, the notion is that at the beginning at least, I will be the master. You two will each be my students, and you are trying to discern the Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is going to be a given rule or principle. And I will give an example of 3 board games, one of which has the Buddha nature. It follows the rule I have in mind, 2 of which do not. Your goal is to try to derive what the Buddha nature is, what principle, what rule I'm using to determine the selection. Now, so, for instance, say I had in mind the Buddha nature of a co-op game. And I told you that Pandemic has the Buddha nature. Twilight Struggle does not. Terraforming Mars does not, you would then, you might have in mind right away. Maybe it's that it's a co-op. But before you can guess, you first have to propose your own example. So you would then propose a game, and I would indicate to you whether it has the Buddha nature or lacks the Buddha nature.
Okay. So we have to prove the theory before we can call
Correct.
the theory.
And that's, as they get more difficult, making guesses, finding out whether that game does or does not is going to be key to trying to zero in on it. Once you have made a successful, once you have proposed something that does indeed follow the principle, then you're allowed to make a guess about what the principle itself might be. We'll be fairly lax in this scenario. Wrong guesses are acceptable, but usually you try to take a couple stabs before you're ready to propose a couple examples before you're ready to actually take a guess at what the answer is. And under this circumstance, I'd like us to go around at least once before anyone attempts to guess what the Buddha nature is.
Sounds good.
So I'm afraid that co-op will not, in fact, be my example. But if you guys are ready,
wow! Just when I thought we had it easy.
Yeah.
Tony, if you are ready, Chris, if you are ready, we'll do our first round of this.
Bring it on.
Okay. So my students, I give you code names which possesses the Buddha nature. However, Notre Dame lacks the Buddha nature. Ra lacks the Buddha nature. So, code names, yes. Notre Dame, Ra, no. Tony, do you have a game in mind?
Ooh, I'm trying to think of one that has this thing in my mind.
Right?
Go to Chris.
Okay. Anything you throw out might give you some information too. So
Right.
You don't have to zero right in on it right away.
Sure.
You're not giving up any capital by tossing out your own games.
It's not a bad investment. Terraforming Mars.
Terraforming Mars lacks the Buddha nature.
I'm going to put that in this column over here. I'm making notes.
It's important, and I will also make notes. If you need me to recap too, I can do that for you.
Going to make me mark up my card. I'm running out of space here.
So, Chris, Terraforming Mars does not possess the Buddha nature. What do you have in mind?
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica does not have the Buddha nature.
Interesting.
Yeah, they went a different direction.
Yes, gee. The Faxon 5, do you know what that is?
I think
It's
I'm
an old
familiar with
bookshelf.
that, but let me just confirm real quick.
An old Avalon Hill bookshelf game.
A popular WBC tournament too, by the way.
Oh, what
cool.
isn't? Come on now. Let's be honest.
That said, while I'm interested, Faxon 5 lacks the Buddha nature. So far, we have no examples that.
No, we do not.
Codenames is the soul.
Is it okay to say what I was thinking?
Now that it's eliminated, by all means, share your thought process.
Why you think why you chose it? Like, why I chose BSG?
Because there's a team aspect.
Right. And I chose BSG for the traitor/assassin. That's what I was thinking, although it's slightly different.
Yeah.
I might be going less deep than you gentlemen are, but
Yes. There is that. Well, in that case, let's go with something like Spyfall.
Spyfall does not possess the Buddha nature.
Huh. So random guessing and shouting is not part of the Buddha nature of code names.
Nor it turns out the secret agent theme that
What about? I think these are all kind of the same game, right? But like Mr. X, the Hunt for Dracula, there's that
Okay, yeah.
hidden.
neither of which possesses the Buddha nature. So I feel like we might have gone in deeper here than I intended. So I'm going to
I'm talking to train gamers here.
This is true.
I'm going to propose 2 games now. One
Okay.
that and this is a thing the master may do. One that runs with the example you provided that does not possess the Buddha nature, and then one that does. So, Mr. Jack, for instance, does not possess the Buddha nature.
So hidden movement. Wow, okay.
Dungeon Lords possesses the Buddha nature.
Oof.
Oh.
Do you have a proposed game?
Does Galaxy Trucker?
Galaxy Trucker possesses the Buddha nature.
Oh. I'm outclassed here. I've never even played Galaxy Trucker.
Do you have a guess,
I do.
Chris, or do you want to hold on to the?
Oh no, I can let it go.
Go. Okay.
It's games designed by Vlada Shavato.
Indeed, it is. This is the way of Buddha. You have correctly discerned. So,
yeah.
Chris, having won, it is customary that the student then becomes the master, that you would then take the next round and propose an example of your own. Are you comfortable with that, or should I keep going?
Yeah, I think I am. I think that would be fun. So
All right.
I need to come up with my rule and provide 2 examples that do not prove and one that does.
Correct.
All right.
Fire at will.
So I have a rule, and the ones that do not prove the rule are Bruges and Agricola. But the one that does prove the rule is Blood Rage.
Oof. Never played that.
So let me propose Zombicide.
Zombicide does fit the rule.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Do you need to know what Zombicide is, or are you good on that one?
No, I know that one.
All right.
I've not played it, but I know what it is.
But I do not yet have a guess, so Tony, go ahead. And
Descent?
it's a good. I like this.
Descent does fit the rule.
Right. That's not the game I was thinking of, but it certainly will do.
It'll do, Pig. It'll do.
It'll do. So I'm ready to make a guess, I think. I will. Well,
Yeah, go ahead. You having correctly guessed a.
just dudes on a map kind of games. Games that have miniatures.
Miniatures would be the correct rule.
So the way this works is 1 that does and 2 that don't. Correct.
Correct.
All right. So the one that does is Raiders of the North Sea.
Which I.
One that does not is Palaces of Carrara. One that does not is Azul.
Are you ready, Dan? Do you want to go first?
Oh, here. See, I was hoping you had a guess queued up.
But I can.
But sure, I can guess one. I'll guess Rising Sun.
It does not possess the way of the Buddha.
Okay.
By the way, my dog's name is Buddha.
Ah.
See, that's why you remembered the term and I did not.
But he's actually named after a hockey player named Peter Budaj, whose hockey nickname was Buddha.
There you go.
All hockey players have nicknames.
All right, I've stalled long enough. So I think I'm going to go with Le Havre.
See, Le Havre is a tricky one because it partially possesses the way of the Buddha. But there are aspects that are contrary to the ways of Buddha.
That's interesting.
Welcome to my world.
Way out of left field. Let's say Sorrow of the Seas.
Does not possess the way of the Buddha.
Okay.
That's a good way to get rid of tile laying.
Care for another set of clues?
Yeah, I think so because my brain's going down a path and I don't think it's right.
A title that does not possess the way of the Buddha would be Seven Wonders.
Okay.
A game that does possess the way of the Buddha would be Agricola.
So Caverna.
Caverna does possess the way.
Okay. Although that kind of scopes down the Agricola question a little bit more.
Well, let me ask then. Kalis.
Kalis absolutely possesses the way of the Buddha.
Okay. Okay. Then I would like to make a guess.
Please
Please
do,
do.
because
I would like to guess that it is worker placement.
Indeed, one of my favorite mechanics.
okay.
So, all right.
Do you want to do one more, Dan?
Yeah. Why don't I close it up here
All right. We'll let you have one more crack.
for our final round, my students? A game which possesses the Buddha nature is Iron Dragon.
Ooh, the Crayon Rail game.
Indeed. Two which do not. War of the Ring does not. Netrunner does not.
I guess, sure, I'll offer a title because I think this fits that, but Age of Steam.
Age of Steam possesses the Buddha nature.
Ooh, bad boys, yes.
But we may not guess yet. Let's go around one time.
Oh, yeah.
no.
Chris.
See, now I kind of want to steal a page from Dan's book and say Carcassonne.
Ooh.
The Buddha does not lie this way. Carcassonne does not.
And if this is not a familiar game to you, fine gentlemen, I can come up with another one, but the Great Heartland Hauling Company.
Oh, no. I actually have learned and never finished playing. Never completed a game of, but I am familiar with Great Heartland Hauling.
Done by Dice Hate Me Games, sponsor of our recent contest.
But that does not, in fact. So the answer is no.
It does not.
No.
So Pick Up and Deliver is not on the list.
That's exactly, yeah.
You know what's funny is trying to, like, it's hard to pick a game that has a single thing to kind of pull out what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and early
That's
on, I
the
think
trick.
I think that's over ambitious until we have a few hits. Like at the beginning, simply
Yeah.
like you start eliminating as you can, but it's aggressive when we're not even in the ballpark necessarily.
Yeah.
This would be a good drinking game. Every time you guess incorrectly, you must.
I heartily approve of that. All right, so Ticket to Ride.
So before I answer that, I will say that like if played by the formal rules, there's an additional mode that your turn can take.
Okay.
Called Mondo, which is where all of the students are allowed to guess whether they think the proposed koan has the Buddha nature. So in this case, before I answer the question, I am curious. If you had to guess, Tony, do you believe that Ticket to Ride possesses the Buddha nature?
Based on the game that I believe that I will offer next, provided Chris is correct, I do in fact believe that Ticket to Ride possesses the nature of the Buddha.
And so it is.
Does it have a choo-choo?
Yes. The rule in this case was has trains.
Wow. Way to pander, Dan. Way to pander.
Love it. Love it.
You got to know your audience.
Absolutely. Well, that's fun. I mean, that's definitely a different way of trying to think about games that I can honestly say I haven't done before.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Mr. Tony, thank you so much for being on. This was a lot of fun. I knew early on that, I kind of wanted to talk to somebody who's been in, been out, why they changed and what's changed in their life to make things happen, because, we reach a point where we're like, why are we doing this? Are we still having fun? Because, right, that's the goal of all this stuff, whether it's board games, whether it's content creation, it's, are we having fun? And it sounds like you're having a lot of fun.
I am, and tonight was part of that. This was a great pleasure, actually. Good way to spend part of my Friday evening, I look forward to the rest of my evening. You guys got it off to a great start. I really appreciate. Awesome.
So I put up your Twitter handle. Is that the best place for people to find you these days? Is just follow you there and see when you post things?
Yeah, sure. That's pretty much the only social media I'm active on. I'm on Board Game Geek. My Board Game Geek handle is Tony Fryer. That's pretty boring,
but easy.
That's what it is. If anybody wants to geek mail me or something like that, they can do so there.
But don't bother asking for the heavy cardboard inaugural SNFC map because that will not happen.
The bad answer is you got to ask Edward.
Fair enough. Well, this was a lot of fun, sir. I certainly appreciate it. If I ever make it out your way, I will certainly love to sit down and play a nice long 18XX and have a good evening with it.
I would very much look forward to that. You're absolutely welcome here at any time.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for being on and agreeing to it. And the schedule juggle that went on behind the scenes, I appreciate you being flexible.
No problem. Love the show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. Thank you for watching. And thank Dan for a great game. So you all be sure to have fun when you game all night. Game All Night is proud to be sponsored by Game Toppers. Check them out at GameToppersLLC.com, upgrading your gaming experience. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our efforts at comedy and fun, please support us on Podpledge. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, don't forget to engage with us on Board Game Geek Guild 3134. You can also check us out on our website, GameAllNightShow.com. This show has been made possible through supporters like these. Angry Octopus.
All right, I just wanted to run downstairs and grab something 1880 related.
Oh, this is exciting! It's show and tell is our new third segment. Chris has got shipping tubes now. What's it?
Is that the map?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is rocking.
So, yeah, that's it. So Cleveland, man, that map is rough.
Yeah.
I like legit had to make a whole new one.
Yeah.
So I made a new one. I put all the stock certificates on it, changed the par values and everything.
Oh my word. So here's what my 18XX pimping is about. I love to have priority deal markers that are themed to the game.
Ooh, I like that.
So this is my 1880 one.
The dragon? Oh, I love that.
I mean, it looks very much like it's got the red ball.
Holy smokes!
That one?
Yeah. Is that pretty good?
That's
great.
Awesome. That's like perfect.
Yeah. If
how
you
do you do that?
If you email me your address, I will send you this because I can get more from the Asian market down the highway.
Oh.
Way.
I will totally send you my address because that is amazing.
You got it, buddy.
That. So I went through and I corner clipped all of my certificates and well, I don't have I have the one for chits and then I also have one that'll do like rounded radius on paper.
That is awesome.
So, well, it sounded awesome until I had to go do all of the phase markers and you realize like how many tokens are in this little thing.
Yes.
And then all the trains.
Yeah. Some games you'll just spend days doing that.
And you just like clump, and I do really equate this kind of stuff to like people painting minis and things. It's a way to kind of enjoy the hobby when you can't enjoy the hobby, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't play an 18XX game every night, but I can clip some corners and I can play in the computer for an hour and work on a map or.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? That's fantastic.
Well, and folks who are into lifestyle games talk about this a lot, which is those spawn all these ways you can engage with your. At that point, the game itself is a hobby, and they spawn all these kinds of ways you can engage with it, away from the table. Times when you're not playing now. Because there's a community around it, because there's other things you're doing the rest of the time. And I've always found a lot of the value in that. That really lets you create a comfortable zone for yourself. Where that game is just like surrounds you, and I think those craft things.
And the game itself almost kind of fades, and it's just the vehicle for the interactions it's creating.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's why we do it.
Right, and I think it's fun. I think there's something interesting about having that 18XX group. I didn't even ask you if you've been to WBC or anything like that. Because you'd love WBC.
Chattanooga.
Oh yeah, and then there's Chattanooga does the 18XX con, and then there's Derailed in Delaware. That's the one Pierre runs.
There's an amazing number of those all around the country. There's one in Portland. There's one in Medicine Hat, Canada, that I'll be going to in 2019.
Cool. Clump, clump, clump. Yep. Clump, clump, clump. Yep. Clump, clump, clump. Yep.
One more guess.
You want a couple more stabs?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Well, go ahead. Stab away, Mr. Stabby McStabberson.